Hello and welcome to Maxim Foods Inside Track. It's been 3 weeks since our last video. Lots changed since then. Spring is here in Brisbane. Smell of jasmine. We've got two Brisbane football teams in the finals, the Brisbane Lions and the Brisbane Broncos. So the sun's out. What a great time to be alive in Brisbane at the moment. Let's have a look at the dairy industry. Let's start with whole milk powder. Been a pretty pessimistic view for the last 3 months on whole milk powder. Demand conditions have been very bearish and supply quite good coming into the season. After two consecutive falls or large falls on the GDT, we saw a correction last night of 5%, which was really positive for the NZ and AU farmers. Is there momentum behind that? That'll be the big question mark. Southeast Asia were the biggest buyers last night on the auction, which would suggest that there were some short positions there that they needed to fill and dove in and took advantage of the good pricing. In overall, still good value over the 5-year tracking of whole milk powder. So it's still a good time to buy. So we should see some good demand in the next fortnight. The big question mark being though, is there enough demand behind just to balance out the new season in New Zealand and Australia? Moving on to skim milk powder. So we look in the EU, pricing has been reasonably bearish, but has become a bit more stable as a few bigger export deals for EU skim have crystallised. In the US, we see a reasonably stable skim or non-fat market. If we look over in the New Zealand and Australian markets, skim pricing on futures had predicted an uplift. However, we saw the reverse last night, minus 1.6% on the GDT, which would suggest that supply is still abundant in both New Zealand and Oz, as a lot of processors are leaning towards that butter skim mix over other mixes. So supply is good, the demand reasonably soft globally, so we will see or predict a reasonably bearish outlook for skim in the next 3 to 4 months. Having a look at butter fat, so we look across the globe. In the EU, things have been relatively stable. Pricing remains good. Demand has picked up a little bit on the retail side of things, which is good news after some bearish conditions a couple of months ago. In the US, good domestic demand for cream has kept butter fat reasonably tight and pricing reasonably strong. In the Australian-New Zealand market, positive results last night on the GDT, a good balance of supply and demand globally for New Zealand butter and Australian butter, which has helped keep pricing relatively strong. A bit more of a bullish outlook for butter over the next 3 months, so it'll be interesting to see how it performs against the other commodities. Having a look at cheese now. In the EU, slightly more bullish conditions, milk tapering off over there, so we have seen a bit less pressure on the sellers side. In the US, volatility continues, up, down and around for pricing there. We have seen a drop off on milk as mentioned previously in the US for July, so we would see that supply perhaps tightening up against what it has been over the last 3 months. So this may cause more bullish or a bit more price stability for US cheese. In Australia and NZ, retail demand was sluggish over July, August, which has created a bit more cheese in the market. Coming up to Christmas though, we should see the food service and retail kick on, so we should see that correct itself. So moderately stable conditions and outlook for cheese in New Zealand and Australia. Having having a look at lactose and whey. Lactose finally seen some good signs of improvement in the EU and the US. It has been in the doldrums for the last 3 to 4 months, so it is good to see some positivity in that commodity. In the whey powder or sweet whey side of things, much similar. It has been in the doldrums, but we've seen a bit of an uptick in global demand activity, which has stabilised pricing. In the protein side of things, WPC has seen a good uplift after reaching a pretty low base 2 months ago, especially in European WPC. There's some good demand, and we have seen pricing rise reasonably quickly. In the US, a similar situation where pricing has improved. In WPI, we have seen, I guess, not as bullish conditions, but price stability, which is a bit more encouraging for the sellers. Thanks very much for listening to today's Inside Track, and I'll see you again in a fortnight.